They say curiosity killed the cat. I suppose in a way, it's nearly killed part of me too. For years, Neopets was my digital sanctuary. I grew up with it, nurtured it, my digital pets, traded in the Neopedian stock market, and lived through every plot from the Meridell War to the rise and fall of the Darkest Fairy. Especially her. The game on the PlayStation 2, The Darkest Fairy, left a deeper mark than any other Neopedian story. The sheer scale of the threat was the transformation of Fiora, the despair that gripped fairyland. It was a maturity that Neopets hadn't really touched before, but when it was over, she was turned to stone. A part of me wondered what came out next after a world so profoundly scarce. That's how I stumbled into the murky waters of Neopedian urban legends. I was a regular on an obscure decade-old Neopets fan forum, the one where posts were sparse and members were mostly old-timers like me, clinging on to the fading embers of nostalgia. On one thread read the title, Lost Broadcast Neopia's Darkest Secret, kept popping up in an old cache version of the site. It was sparse, mostly hushed whispers about a legendary unaired animated show, a follow-up to the Darkest Fairy game. Not a game, mind you, but an actual Saturday morning cartoon commissioned by Neopets Inc. Shortly after the PS2 game flopped, then mysteriously shelved, it's most dismissed it as a fanfiction or creepypasta. I was intrigued. The thread hinted at the bizarre details, corrupted frames, distorted audio, and a narrative far too dark for a children's show. It spoke of a world that truly never recovered from the Darkest Fairy's region. The one where the stone statue in Fairyland wasn't just a monument of her defeat, but a silent conduct for a lingering malaise. The more I read about this obsessive I became, there was a vague breadcrumbs mentioned of a more specific animation studio that went bankrupt. A production house in an obscure corner of the internet. A single grainy screenshot of a desaturated Fiora, looking more mournful than majestic. It took months delving into the forgotten corners of the web, tracking down the defunct company registries, and even cold emailing old animators who might have worked on the project. Mostly ignored me. One man named Bartholomew Bardian Finch, who claimed that he was a junior animation on the show before it all went south, he actually replied. He was cryptic, almost fearful. He spoke of bad vibes and an unnatural parlor, and the whispers in the editing bay. He mentioned a single unlabeled VHS tape that was supposedly sent to select a few for review before the project was abruptly, permanently shelved. It was never meant to be seen, his email concluded. Burn it if you find it. That email, instead of deteriorating me, only fanned by the flames. Barty provided no direct leads, but his words gave me new keywords, new angles to search, and then against all odds I found it, in an auction of a virtually unknown agent online marketplace for forgotten media. Unlabeled VHS, possible unreleased children's animation pilot. The images were blurry, but the tape itself looked worn generic. I bought it, of course. The price was exorbitant for a forgotten VHS, but for me it was a pilgrimage. The package arrived a week later. The tape was heavier than I expected. It was casing faintly sick, as if it had been handled by countless sweaty palms. There was no label, just a faint, almost imperceptible scrawl in the spine. NND Pilot. Neopia's New Dawn, on the proposed title of the show, according to the forum threads. A title to that, in hindsight, felt like a cruel joke. I set up my old VCR, dusted off the CRT television from storage. I wanted the full authentic experience. The VCR whirled to life, low manacle groan. The screen flickered, showing a blur of static before the familiar rainbow Neopets logo appeared. My heart pounded. This was it. The intro was almost normal, slightly off-key rendition of the Neopia Central theme. Simplified animation of the Neopia Central shops and various Neopets frolicking. But even here, the first oddities emerged. The colors, usually so vibrant and saturated, seemed muted and almost exaggerated, as if a thin film of dust had settled over everything. Neopets' eyes were still wound and cartoonish, lacked the usual sparkle. They looked vacant, doll-like even. The episode began in Fairyland. It was meant to be a story of rebuilding, a celebration of the Darkest Fairy's defeat. Fiora was there. Her voice spoke a little too soft, a little too strained. She addressed the citizens, speaking of hope of a new dawn, but her eyes, those beautiful wide eyes, were shadowed in a faint, almost invisible tremor that ran through her hands. Her wings, usually incandescent, were dull and tarnished silver. The scene shifted to Meridel. Brave Sir Geron and Princess Roberta were overseeing the reconstruction of a damaged castle wall. Their banter was stilled and their movements stiff. Geron occasionally paused, looking up at the sky with an expression of profound weariness, as if expecting something terrible to descend at any moment. Roberta, usually so earnest, kept glancing nervously over her shoulder. Her smile brittled. The background music, which started cheerful, will occasionally dip into low, discordant hum, like a distant, off-tuned cello. As the episode progressed, the usual oddity of the distortions grew more pronounced. Minor glitches appeared. A frame would briefly tear, a character's arm might stretch out an impossible length for a split second, or a patch of the background would flicker with static. The audio would often warbled, and sometimes beneath the dialogue, I can hear a faint whispers too distant to make out, but chillingly present. They sounded like thousands of voices murmuring an illusion, a low, constant murmur of despair. The episode's premise seemed to have, despite the Darkest Fairy's perfection, her influence, a sort of psychic residue, lingered. Neopia wasn't recovering. It was slowly suffocating under an invisible weight. The skies over Fairyland, instead of their usual vibrant pinks and purples, were a perpetual sickly gray. The flowers in Illison's glade were wilting at an alarming rate, their petals crumbling to dust. Even with bubbly jelly cha, usually with a beacon full of joy and innocence, was depicted with a vacant, slightly trembling smile. His wobbly body seemed to vibrate with the inner dread. Then came the scene that solidified my fear. It was Fiora, alone in her throne room. The lights were dim, casting a long distorted shadows. She approached a window, looking out for the desaturated fairyland. She wasn't just sad, she was utterly broken. A tear rolled down from her cheek, but it wasn't water. It was thick black like crude oil, leaving a shimmering, dark trail. "We thought she was gone," Fiora whispered, her voice cracking, the whispers beneath her words rising slightly in volume, turning into a low guttural moan. Turned to stone, a monument to her defeat. Her eyes, now fully shadowed voids, slowly turned towards the camera, directly at me. But this stone is just a cage, and her despair, her shadow, it bled into every essence of Neopia. The screen flickered violently. The background behind Fiora stretched and warped into elegant fairy motifs, swift twisting into jagged skeletal shapes. The black tear on her face pulsed and then exploded into a shower of black static that briefly filled the screen. When it cleared, Fiora was gone. Instead, the camera was focused on the Darkest Fairy statue in the collapsed Fairyland crater. But it wasn't just a statue anymore. A faint crimson glow pulsed from within its obsidian heart, and tendrils of dark mist snaked out from its base, intertwining with the withered grass. The statue's stone face, usually serene in its defeat, seemed to twist into a faint malevolent grin. The whispers crescented into a cacophony of distorted screams, not from the show's characters, but from something far more primal, more ancient. The screen zoomed into the statue's eyes, now glowing with that same malevolent crimson light. Then a single deep, resonating voice, unlike the characters, filled the room, utterly devoid of any background noise. Cutting through the screams, it wasn't a voice I recognized from the Darkest Fairy game, but it pulsed with her familiar, terrible power. "You wanted a new dawn, didn't you not?" the voice boomed, chilling me to the bone. "There is no dawn, only an endless night." And then, just suddenly, the screen went black. Static filled the air. A harsh grating sound vibrated through my bones. The VCR whirled down automatically, ejecting the tape with a shuddering click. I sat there frozen for what felt like an eternity. My heart hammered against my ribs. My breath caught in my throat. The room felt cold and the airway heavy. Every shadow seemed to thrive. I looked at the tape lying on top of the VCR. It felt like an evil artifact. Slowly, shakily, I reached for it. My fingers trembled as I grasped the slick plastic. Barty Finch's words echoed in my mind. "Burn it, if you find it." I couldn't burn it. Not truly. Not here in my apartment. But I could destroy it. I yanked the magnetic tape out of the cassette, ripping around my hand until it snapped, then tore and shred the fragile ribbon into countless pieces. I smashed the plastic casing with a hammer, reducing it to shards. I threw the fragments into dozens of different pieces in the trash bins across my neighborhood, feeling so desperate primal to disperse its toxic existence. It's been months since that night. I still play Neopets, but it's not the same. Every time I log in, I see it. The faint disarration, the subtle flatness of the characters. Eyes the lingering shadow that seems to cling into dark corners of the site. I hear whispers of the static of my headphones, the distant, discordant hum of the unseen cello. I tried to find the old forum thread again, but it's gone, purged from existence. Barty Finch's email address is defunct, as if the lost broadcast was never mentioned. Sometimes late at night, when the house is quiet, I swear I can hear a faint cool current of air, carrying with the scent of dust and dying flowers, and I hear that voice, deep and resonant, whispering in the furity of my hearing, a single, chilling phrase. "There is no dawn, only an endless night." And I know with the horrifying certainty that Neopia never truly recovered. It never had a new dawn, it just slipped, slowly and quietly, into eternal lingering twilight, from which it could never escape. I was foolish enough to watch it happen.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.